Hello. Let's get started with the Nantucket Conservation Commission meeting for Wednesday, June 19th. We are recording, so if you're recording, please let us know, and if you could silence your cell phones, that'd be appreciated. We're going to start with the public comments for items not being heard this evening. Okay, we do? Okay.
Oh, feel free.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get the microphone.
Okay.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Bill Greeter, 10th Street.
Yep.
Of the Badlands of Nantucket. Just following up, when the town was doing a discussion on the Walter Barrett rebuild, one of the things that I was really glad to see was the commission had some very strong wording in there about prohibiting of fueling on the dock, and I'm sure you remember that, the conditions you put in there. So my thought was, good for the goose is good for the gander, and it should be an everyday enforcement. There's been fueling at the dock for many, many years, diesel fueling out of the back across from the commercial boats. And so I took some photos of it and passed them on to Jeff. I've also talked to the fire chief. As far as I know, it's not a permitted activity. Given the fact that all of us are spending a ton of money, including the town, on trying to keep or improve the water quality, this very potential, very hazardous potential is there, and I believe it's an activity that should not be allowed. So I wanted to bring it up today. Jeff says that he's working with the fire chief on it, but I wanted you aware that that's an issue.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bill.
So, following up on Mr. Greer's remarks, I got a phone call an hour ago or so saying that there's been a spill that the caller estimated was at least a gallon, maybe more. He said that it reeks of fuel oil right there.
These guys can't hear you. Is the microphones on?
No, the
Yes.
microphones here don't broadcast through
Into the
room.
room.
They're just
Right.
for recording. So you got to use your outside voice.
So I got a phone call about an hour ago from someone who had witnessed a spill, I guess it was today, over a gallon, he estimated. He said that his mooring lines reek of diesel fuel and that the whole area reeks of diesel fuel. He named the person who he thought was responsible and made a plea that all steps necessary should be taken to stop this activity. He said it happens. He witnesses spills out there all the time.
Where is that, Ian?
The Walter Barrett Pier. So, and he named someone who apparently fuels 2 boats there with diesel fuel from a pickup truck.
Well, I'll say it because we get reports too. The last reports we had were Tom Malesko's boats that are the main source of fueling there. So just to kind of update from what Mr. Greeter said, yesterday, kind of unsolicited, Steve Murphy popped down to our office with this very concern on the pier, and we kind of forwarded some information. Through the fire department's office, no one has a permit through there to do any kind of fueling on that pier. So there's been issues with fuel trucks and other things that are there. So he has kind of requested that the commission kind of allow us to kind of partner up to just cease fueling and fuel deliveries to that pier altogether. So I said, well, the good news is I have a hearing tomorrow, and I can ask for the commission's permission to, in their name, say, hey, it's in the order for that project, but even before they've started work, it's over. It's done, and then he'll probably take the lead because they have a little bit more oomph than we do for things like that. But to kind of put out the word from fire and from the Conservation Commission that all fueling activities on that pier are to end in permanence, and then it's just a matter of enforcement. So if that's acceptable to you guys, I don't think you have to make a motion and vote on it. But
Totally.
if that's the will of the board, I think we're happy to do that.
Who's the main enforcement body for this one?
This one would probably be better through state fire code.
Yep.
They have a lot of. They are a lot nastier to deal with than we are. They can really make people's lives miserable for
And if
violating that.
Sorry.
So, I mean, to the point of if there's someone that's commercially hauling fuel out there, any commercial fuel hauler obviously has a license that if they're doing it illegally, the fire chief, through his duties, has the ability to revoke that license. So let's just say if you owned a fuel hauling business and you were caught doing it, and
That'd be big.
through due process, they could essentially strip you of your license and you would essentially be out of business for not following the rules. So, fire code doesn't have a lot of kind of half-hearted penalties. They're kind of, you either comply or you don't. So,
Yeah.
Will they be putting up signage then, Jeff, to indicate
correct.
this?
So
Yeah.
I think what the two-pronged approach to deal with is Chief Murphy would like to put up signs that just say something simply, by order of the Nantucket Fire Department and Nantucket Conservation Commission, no fueling operations can happen in this area. And then obviously enforcement from there. But then for specific individuals, he would like to provide written notice to people that are known to fuel or do that activity, and would like kind of both offices to sign on for it needs to stop. This is your one warning. So next time we'll.
Yeah.
And people that need fuel out there can go to medic.
So there's a licensed fueling facility, just 150 yards up the way, that is properly licensed and has the ability to do that.
Is there anything that stops people from taking their fuel cans from the dock, putting them on their boat, and then filling up and spilling it all over the place once they get off the dock?
Unfortunately, not as much. It's more of a commercial hauling thing. I mean, obviously, you would hope that people that are bringing their own fuel cans, it's either, like a lot of boats that run their 5-gallon can that just plugs directly in, so they're not transferring fuel or doing that. So I think some of it will be education for those folks. I think encouraging people that need to fuel up to use a licensed facility, or if they're really desperate that they can pull their boat at the boat ramp and fuel it up at the gas station or fuel it up wherever is a better location than in the water. But I think it's just going to be a matter of staying on top of it for the summer, making sure that people understand that it's not okay to fuel up there for the very purpose of what happened today. So a gallon is a reportable level to the DEP. So if that got reported all the way up there, DEP can even take action from there. So it's something that I know the fire chief is taking very seriously, and I think we would like to hold the condition in place that the town has to not allow fueling.
Is there any way to put a camera up?
So we've talked to the deputy chief about that before, and it's something where it's a bit of a connectivity issue, but I think that's something that we're hoping to resolve to get up there, so at least we can have some constant surveillance, or if there is a spill, you can track it back to who it was.
Yeah, I have one on my phone and it's linked to my job site, so anytime
Yeah.
anyone goes there, it does a recording. It's
Yeah.
run through AT&T and I think Verizon now.
Yeah.
That's motion activated. It just
Yeah, it's
flips on.
pretty cool. So I got it on the front and the back and it kicks
Yeah.
on and records.
No, I think it's definitely something that we're looking to put in.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anything else on that?
So I just want to be clear, you would like us
yes.
to pursue that.
Yes.
Yes,
Alright.
definitely.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Very
All right,
good.
I'll report at our next meeting then on where we are. Hopefully it's well down the path of signs being up and
All right, summer
Things in
hasn't
place.
started yet.
Talked about signage
Yeah, I thought we
and the
did.
conditions.
we did. I mean, the town obviously hasn't started that project yet, so it may be just a little bit of a lag, but I don't think there's any harm in getting the signs up earlier.
Clear, yeah, a little sooner, but the signs are mandatory to go up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Any other public comment? Okay. So we're gonna go into the public hearing, notices of intent. We have a couple continuances. We have Richard E. Behrman, trustee, 272 Pulpus Road, continued till July 3rd. And Marcia Fader, 36 Liberty Street, is continued till August 28th. And, okay. So we're gonna start with Mary D. Starr, 19 East Creek Road.
Thank you. Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors on behalf of the current property owner. I'm going to ask the commission to continue both number 1 and number 2. Both notice of intents for 19 East Creek Road. One was related to reconstruction of a dock and the other was reconstruction of the existing dwelling. Twofold reasons. We've just received a letter from Mr. Goldberg, who's in a butter, his counsel, with regard to comments on the current application. That was just received yesterday. Would like some time to respond, like Mr. Goldberg, time to further review the application. And quite honestly, I think based on the nature of this project, we'll start this out with a new board, I think, and it's probably best for everybody involved. So I'd like to ask for continuance till the next meeting, but we may, in the interim, decide how we're gonna continue with these, withdraw, refile. We're gonna decide how we're gonna approach this.
Okay.
And I don't think I have anything else before the commission today, so I'd like to take the opportunity actually to thank the outgoing members for the time, the commitment, and the fairness that they've shown for the many projects that we've had before you. I'm sure we'll be seeing you all and wish you all the best of luck.
Thanks, Paul.
So,
Thank you very much.
you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will continue to the 3rd?
Yes.
July 3rd.
Thank you.
Yep.
Don't worry.
July. Ain't got me yet.
You'll be watching
Paul,
I couldn't
fireworks.
believe it was actually
Should have done
Here.
that like 3 years ago.
Until August. Okay.
Should do it when they come in, not on the way out, you know?
Yeah. So then we'll go on to Town of Nantucket, Jetty's Beach Playground, end of Jefferson Ave. Children's. How are we doing on that?
Stand up now.
Yeah.
Mark Voigt in for Charles Rogers, Deputy DP Director. This is a continuation from last week, I believe. And
Many continuations from last week.
So I think you all know the project by now, right?
Yep.
I'm not aware of an update. We're waiting to hear from.
We're still waiting for Natural Heritage.
Your kid.
No. So,
So we've got quite a few of them built and ready to go. So
Yeah.
anything you can do, that'd be great. Otherwise, we're.
I think we're kind of stuck till
Yeah, we
the
can't.
3rd. We don't even have any specials anymore until we get for issuing out.
No.
Got
Can't.
mulligans and
Well, we just.
whatever it is.
So I guess
Sand shots, mulligans.
you'd be looking to continue to the 3rd. And hopefully
Well,
it'll be resolved by then.
there'll still be enough of us on the board.
Is there,
Who've heard
there's
it,
no way
right?
that, sorry, Ashley, go ahead.
Well, I'm just,
Going down too.
we won't have to,
You only be, there will still be a quorum regardless of how appointments
Okay.
go, because no one was not sitting on this.
Yeah.
okay.
So
Is there any mechanism to approve this through staff if it gets natural heritage? No. Okay.
I looked
Yeah.
and looked.
Oh,
Well, if it comes in, call, we'll come in and
Yeah.
prepare this.
Yeah, right.
that's true.
We could, but
I could.
don't you have to post it and
Oh.
Oh, God,
has to be
yeah.
publicly listed and all that stuff?
We
Yeah,
have
we'd
to
ha-
continue to a date certain.
Yeah, so if we continue to the 3rd, I mean, we could try to renotice it really quickly, but that would take some to do it.
We all want it done.
Yeah. That's
A lot
not.
of people.
That's not the concern. Yeah.
We're starting to get some inquiries from people who've been to the island before.
Yeah.
I'll say they depend on it, but they
Right.
do look forward to them and they've had to make some adjustments, so. We're kind of like, okay. well.
So I think
Offering to carry them on their back.
I think we're
Beach wheelchairs out there, but that's not gonna be enough.
I think we're stuck till the 3rd. I mean, I literally just checked my email too to see if they had sent something in, but nothing yet.
Be a record on this one.
What's that?
It's like a record for this one. This seems to be the longest time waiting for this. Yeah, well.
I've said my piece.
Okay, so I guess we will continue to, so you'd like to continue to the
July
3rd?
If that's the
Yeah,
best we can do.
I do believe.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Looking through these. Okay, Catherine S. Spellman, Revocable Trust for Woodbine Street.
get the natural heritage letter?
I did get the one.
Get yours, huh?
I got mine, just in case.
You brought it with him.
Here, I don't know if this is working or not, but if you could try to use it.
Oh,
we're
all
supposed
right.
to try. The green light's not on. I can't get it to stay on. So I hope it's
Oh
working.
yeah, the green light's on. Either way, I don't mind holding the microphone. Don Bracken for the applicant from Bracken Engineering. This project was continued from last week. We didn't do any presentation. We didn't have a response from Natural Heritage. The project consists of upgrading the existing septic system. There are two structures on the property, a main house and a cottage. The existing septic systems for each house consist of a metal tank and cesspool. The main house has a metal tank close to the top of the coastal bank, and the cesspool falls within the coastal dune area. The resources on the site, the closest resource is the coastal bank. Further resource area is a coastal dune area that we located, that was delineated by Stan Humphreys from LEC. All the work for the septic system will be within the existing lawn areas. The septic system, for the most part, will be outside the 100-foot buffer of the coastal bank. A small section of the tank will be in the 100-foot buffer. The soil absorption system will be out of it. Some piping will be between the 50 and the 100-foot buffer to go to where the new septic tank location is. The other aspect of the project is to install a concrete pad for an outside oil tank that's going to be screened by some kind of fencing. That falls roughly in the middle of the 50-foot and 100-foot buffer zones. And we have the Natural Heritage letter says that no impact and no take. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
What's the oil tank for out there in the middle of nowhere?
That's what they want to use to heat the house, I guess.
Kind of sticking out there.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was their choice. So yeah, and I asked about that as well. They said they're going to put a fence around it. So.
Yeah. Well, maybe they didn't want to get it near the 50.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Next to the well.
Yeah, it's very close to the well. I see.
Yeah.
So is the
I noticed that too.
cesspool, or the tank and the cesspool for the cottage. We never found the cesspool, but we think it's like right near that well. They did test the water. I suggested that when we looked at this like 6 months ago. I said, you better have that tested before you keep using it, and it did come back clean. But I don't think the cottage was used that much. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Can we sort of predicate that the installation of the tank has, or is it already a bylaw that it has to have the ability to contain any spill or?
I'm not aware that that's a requirement for a residential tank. I don't think I've seen it.
I don't think it is.
I think it is now for interior tanks.
Interior
isn't it?
tanks, I think
Yeah.
so, yeah, but outdoor tanks, which.
And there's just a crawl space, so they don't have a basement
Yeah.
to put it inside of. So I think that's.
Right, I understand, but
You just want a little curb. You just like a 4-inch block.
yeah,
curb.
Yeah, I don't
just,
think that's reasonable. That makes
okay,
sense.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something you can certainly condition.
Yeah.
Other thoughts, questions?
Sounds good.
Okay. Any questions from the public? Okay, seeing not, Jeff, we have everything you need to close?
We do.
Would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Do a motion?
Move to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, so Charles Johnson, 25 Old North Wharf.
Thanks, Ross.
My name is Carlos Pena from Phillips CLE Engineering. I'm here representing Mr. Charles Johnson for the Omega Cottage located in Old North Wharf. The project, as stated in the notice of intent, entails the replacement of 2 concrete pads and 2 posts, and then just posting out the top of one pile that's deteriorated. When I was over at the site this afternoon, the owner asked if I could do an additional 3 posts. There are 7 piles total. So we would leave the footings, but just replace 3 other piles. So I just figured I'd mention that today at the meeting. The proposed work will be conducted above the Nemo water line, and it'll be performed hopefully by AGM post sometime in October. Are there any questions?
Get to say, from our field inspection, some of those pilings are definitely sketchy.
Yeah, it looked like it.
Yeah, there are some where I feel like it's like a 2x10 stacked up on top of the post, and it's.
And there's not a lot of weight on it, but still, it's just a perception of it, so it's time to repair it.
It looks iffy.
Right.
It's fine.
Do we need an updated plan, or can we just have that submitted, or?
No, it should be fine. Maybe you can just.
I can leave a copy of this with 3 additional piles noted on it.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty straightforward.
We write that in, probably standard.
Other questions?
Keep going. Looks scary.
Okay. Any questions from the public?
It looks worse than the pictures in person too.
Yeah, they all do sometimes. It's fine.
Is that one?
Okay, do we have everything we need to close, Jeff? Would you like to close? Okay.
Move to close. Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Did you bring your own? What? Did you bring your own?
High Garden Holdings LLC, 49 Holbert Avenue.
My God.
Oops.
Brian Madden from LEC, representing the applicant, High Garden Holdings LLC. This is
You're not up to your
Yes,
usual
it's
form tonight.
proposed project involves some structural and landscaping updates on the existing single-family dwelling, resource areas. Entire lot is in the flood zone, and there's coastal dune within the northern portion of the site that's been flagged out. 2 flags on the east side of the building, and then it kind of goes under the deck and then breaks back out on the west side, and kind of loops around, primarily American beach grass. There's some bittersweet that is popping up in there as well. Landward, south of the dune boundary, it transitions to more landscape type conditions. And under existing conditions, that southwesterly corner of the site is pretty heavily infested with Japanese knotweed coming up in the mulch. Obviously, it's a bad seed source on that end for soil.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'll just kind of walk through the minor details. There's a lot of minimal stuff going on, so I'll just kind of walk through it. So at the front of the structure, the existing brick driveway is going to be replaced with a Belgian block driveway. There's some modifications of retaining walls on the front portion of the house abutting Holbert Ave. Replacing the brick walk with granite stepping stones in front of the dwelling, surrounded by a small lawn area. The outdoor shower on the west side of the building is being removed, and they're adding a porch overhang at the entryway. No footings are just gonna be cantilevered over. Replacing the brick walkway with a boardwalk, and which is going to extend and wrap around existing AC units. That's going to be an elevated boardwalk, just to provide access around the dwelling. In the photographs I'll submit on the back side of what I just passed around, it shows some of the boardwalks on the side of the dwellings, kind of at grade. Everything's being stepped up a little bit, so it will be elevated. And on the east side of the dwelling, there are proposed boardwalk to provide circular access around the dwelling to avoid walking into the dune, and needing to traverse from the beach up through the dune and around the dwelling. As part of the project, we are proposing to manage the knotweed and the bittersweet in the dune and the knotweed in the buffer zone, with typical BMPs, and replace that with a native mix of species within the buffer zone. Gonna plant American beach grass, rugosa rose, bayberry, and beach plum. With the bittersweet kind of being sparse, minimal within the dune, I think we can just remove that by hand. The rest is just American beach grass, so leave that as is. And essentially that's the gist of the project. So a lot of little details, but.
Are you, like, what's the plan with the knotweed treatment? Are you guys gonna go through and do herbicide this year and then try and plant?
That's
next
my
spring?
recommendation. You know, I don't think we're talking removing that soil, keeping it on site. Probably just hand remove and then treat what's remaining with resprouts, and then add plantings next year.
They notified the soil source?
I brought it to the attention of the landscape architect. I'm not quite sure if they know the source.
So that came in with soil.
I'm assuming as much. I mean, it could have been there for a while. I mean, there's not much vegetation between these houses. It's all pretty stacked up.
That's those conditions have existed for a long time there, though, right? That's.
Oh yeah.
That could have been.
This could be an ongoing thing. I just noticed it prior to the growing season. The sprouts were starting to come up. I didn't see any dead stock, so I don't know if they've been treating it as best as they could in the past, or whether or not that's some of a new product. So hopefully provide an improvement over existing conditions. We have requested the waivers for boardwalks within 25 feet and restoration in the 25 foot and in the resource area of the dune itself.
Yeah, I guess it could be in our conditions. I'm concerned in the coastal dune if the bittersweet's just sparse, that then we're gonna try and plant these other plants in there.
Oh, nothing planted in the dune. You probably can't see, I don't know if the flags, but this is kind of what it looks like prior to the growing season. So it's pretty sparse. It can be managed. You're not opening up like denuded areas. It's all fully vegetated.
Looks like
Yep.
mulch them in there.
Yeah.
It's
Just
probably
gonna try to
part
pull
of the
that out
problem.
then? Just trying to.
Correct, yes. It should be easy enough. It's not overwhelming. It's just starting to take. And this is the east side of the dwelling, what that looks like. Again, it's kind of an informal walking path along the east side that they're just going to have a boardwalk, so it's more uniform and there's people aren't
focused a lot. Yeah, that makes sense.
So that trash bin is being moved more landward. There's some utilities on the side that they're just going to be fenced in.
Looks good to me.
Any other questions?
You know, I'm not thrilled with all the boardwalks.
I just see it as, you know, getting people off of the ground.
So not for nothing, just to clarify too, because I looked at it again today. Our performance standards actually prefer elevated boardwalks. So I think given that, and then the fact that our regulations actually grant waivers for this kind of invasive species work in proximity already, I don't actually think there would be waivers required for the project that aren't already granted for the invasive work.
Mm-hmm. Any questions from the public? Okay, Jeff, we have everything we need?
Yes.
Like to close?
Please.
A motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you.
Richard and Diana Chesley, 32 Westchester.
Brian Madden from LC Environmental, representing the applicants. For 32 Westchester, this is actually a subdivided lot off of 32, referred to as Lot C. It's the southerlymost lot. The two other lots, A and B, have existing structures on them that afford frontage on Westchester. This will have frontage on Wesco Place. We were back before you a little bit, about a year and a half ago for an RDA. There's a drainage ditch that's partially within Wesco Place, minimally extending on the 32 Westchester. We submitted an RDA to confirm that wasn't a protectable resource area, which was affirmed through the determination issued in January 2018. To the south of the property, there's a bordering vegetated wetland, part of the Lily Pond system. That is on 34 Westchester. A determination of applicability was issued on that property in July of last year, confirming that boundary, and so that boundary is what you see to the south. The proposed development on the property is located outside the 50-foot buffer zone, and it essentially involves the construction of a single-family dwelling and attached garage, access via a pervious driveway, and utilities will involve connections of a sewer force main into the water line. Proposed roof runoff is being directed to a shallow subsurface infiltration chambers northwest of the dwelling, and there's a small little pervious patio out behind the dwelling. Site regrading has been kept to a minimum. There's very subtle grade changes, and existing vegetation is going to be retained to the max extent feasible and or enhanced. There's some kind of fringing vegetation in the southeasterly corner of the development that any areas that there's some variable lawn areas out in that corner. And that area is just going to be enhanced and beefed up with plantings that will help with drainage, such as pussy willow, arrowwood, high bush blueberry, just to fill in any gaps to make it a little bit more robust. Groundwater is relatively high here. We've documented it at 6.1. So we set the bottom footing of the elevation, the foundation. It's on a slab foundation at that elevation, so we're not getting into high groundwater. So there may be, depending upon the time of year when this is constructed, some minimal encroachment to high groundwater just during the construction of the footing. And we've coordinated with DPW to go through appropriate dewatering steps to dewater into the town drainage system if needed, but if that's not necessary. But yeah, for the alternatives designs, foundation designs, you know, we kicked around. Obviously, full foundation was dismissed pretty early. Crawl space was dismissed. We thought the slab foundation was kind of the best situation here to avoid encroachment into the high groundwater. Realizing that, you know, drainage issues are a big concern here.
Mm-hmm.
Good call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we do ask for the waiver from that 2 feet, but everything else is, like the structure itself is like 65 feet away from the wetland.
Was this the property that used to flood a lot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be bad.
Well,
it's just gonna be so much water.
Where's the pool?
But if you go up,
No,
it's
let's talk,
just
but we've
got
had
everybody else.
we've had a lot of conversations with
go by.
DPW.
Yeah.
And I think
The neighbors.
folks are starting to understand the drainage a lot more.
Yeah. By now, I'm sure they must.
So I think I haven't seen any flooding on this portion of the property. Most of the flooding is associated with this house that
That's
has
what I
the
was
trench.
wondering, because
Yeah, this becomes a pond.
Yeah.
And this family has been working with the town for a long time to try to come up with some solutions. And the solution, I don't know, I think it was 10 or 15 years ago, when Jeff Willett was involved, was to put in a pump system. And so what they were doing is they were just pumping it out in the road and letting it run down the road. And then recently there were a couple of new manholes put in. There's an old 15-inch line that runs through here that was taking runoff from Westchester Street. It came across some of these properties, and I think they broke the line or interfered with the line with one of the houses. And so those people that were working on that house, they installed a new line, a couple of new manholes, and a section of 15-inch pipe, but then it connected to the old 15-inch pipe, which is further down into the wetland. The town did find that, and that was out with Rob did today, looking at it. So we've been trying to, work with some of the neighbors on how we can make the system better. And Rob McNeil and I looked at it, and he definitely suggests, well, if we replace this 15-inch line, which is pretty much clogged right now, the water eventually seeps through. That would be a big improvement for the people in the neighborhood. And everyone has some pumps in the neighborhood, and they're all, dumping into it. Obviously, we won't need any sump pumps with this, with the slab. So that's it. And this is a whole bigger picture that they're working on. And there's evidence that, obviously it's been filling up over time, and the system that is there is getting clogged. So, and it appears from the neighbors that it gets wetter and wetter. It's wetter now than it was in the past.
So, I'll just make clear too, work on that system when that gets designed would still require a filing given the buffer zones and what's going on. So,
okay.
I guess my other question, are you guys gonna mark like the edge of lawn so that people don't cut back in there?
You talking like permanent demarcation?
I mean, if it's natural vegetation to remain, they probably need.
Yeah, we can
something.
certainly up in this area. This is starting to go uphill.
Okay.
So right now it's existing lawn area. The side slope is vegetated basically to the toe.
Okay.
We could talk about putting markers up there or condition it, but I don't see them like do anything up slope.
People do crazy things.
Although it is that's outside 100.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, but certainly I don't know if you would have like split rail fencing or something along that corner just to. There is existing split rail. That kind of peters off right here. That could be extended too. And it's all lawn and driveway in the barn garage to the south before you hit the knotweed wetland.
Sounds pretty.
when you put it that way, it sounds
like that. Split that.
As has pretty white plumes of flowers.
Bees love it. Okay, any questions? Other questions?
So the pervious driveway, what's the material going to be? Shells, or you don't know
Shell
yet?
or gravel or pea stones.
Okay.
Now read.
Okay, questions from the public? Okay. Jeff, we have everything need to close?
We do.
Would you like to close?
Please.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Louis B. Ames, 113A, Winnet Road.
Good fiance.
Good afternoon, Mark Britt from Site Design, representing the applicants at 113A Winnet Road. What you have before you this evening is an application to construct a well just outside of the wetland resource area. The siting of the well has been carefully conducted to avoid septic setbacks from surrounding properties, and this is pretty much the one spot that
Hey, guys.
Hey, can we?
pretty much the one spot that the well could go and be outside of all of the Board of Health mandated septic setbacks. The proposal is also to install a water line to the house from the well, again, just outside the wetland buffer zone, just outside the wetland, excuse me. That'll be a simple trench and fill. Any vegetation disturbed in the buffer zone will be replanted in kind. We're going to try to minimize, vegetation impacts. This is an area that has been heavily altered all around, and there's been a lot of fill placed on all of the surrounding properties. And we've got this little, basically, bowl left over that has collected water, and the soils are rather terrible. And if you look carefully at the wetland line and the existing house, you'll find it's very interesting. It's the only time I've ever tied wetland flags on lattice before.
It's amazing how they got it right to the line.
I think that this house has been here for quite some time, and the area may have gotten wetter, and it may have been permitted and constructed in a different age. So that's basically it, and with that, I'll entertain any questions.
So is it completely vegetated between the house and the well?
There is landscaping in this area, and then there is sort of semi-native, overgrown vegetation, remnants of landscaping from abutting properties, ingrown with the usual stuff that we see in such settings here. It is fairly well vegetated, not too many trees, mostly, larger shrubs and whatnot, stuff that could be, for the most part, avoided with a small drill rig, like a track-mounted drill rig, as opposed to, backing up a big truck. But it's a less than ideal location, basically.
Yeah. Definitely, depending on how good the person is who's digging the well and putting the line in. I mean, they could do a fair amount of damage if they're not being monitored. That's my feeling.
They do pump a lot of water when they do it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to do it because this is my job. So this well is being proposed to service the building to accommodate a new subdivision line, because that building is currently serviced by a well on the lot that holds contiguous with the building shown on the plan to the south. I just think permitting a well in this area is not something that we've done right adjacent to wetlands, and I want everyone to be cognizant of if you grant a waiver for it for a building that's already being serviced by water,
Right, like
it could be dicey.
yeah, I mean, why, is this planning board who subdivides all these and okays it by the wetlands? Because I think we have a lot of this dicey business going on.
I would say
where
that
it's like-
they are somewhat independent processes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can uphold your standards if you see fit or necessary, or grant waivers if you see it fit or necessary, independent of what planning or zoning, or the only one accommodation I'd say is if it's a septic system that's permitted through the Board of Health, our regulations are kind of incumbent upon them to ensure compliance with Title V.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I mean, you are here to uphold the standards of your regulations.
Yeah.
My feeling is we shouldn't be drawing water from 3 feet away from a wetland.
I mean, just one thing to that, I mean,
please.
This is an area that has, you know, a perched water table, and
Right.
the well would be punching down much deeper than that. So, you know, we wouldn't be drawing down the water in the wetland, but you know, I understand the concerns, because this is one of those, it's a little bowl with a lot of clay and whatnot at the bottom, basically holding this very shallow near surface aquifer, and the well would be going down, you know, 60, 80 feet, you know, below that to draw on a deeper, cleaner water table.
Yeah.
And is there a chance of breaking through some of the clays that hold this wetland and causing it to
I mean, with
lose water?
the way they drive the casings for those wells, there's not a lot of, you know, they're not boring a huge hole and then putting a casing in. They're pushing a casing in that is basically being pressed on all sides by the surrounding material. So that would not likely be a problem, but
I mean, they made a mess when they did a well next door to my house, so.
Yeah.
I'm a bit puzzled. The work description doesn't mention the well. It just mentions the septic system. What am I missing here? Am I on the wrong? Okay, I'm on the
On
wrong.
113.
Okay, I'm on the okay.
You had one.
Sorry.
180.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So where's its current well service?
the current well service is off plan on the other side.
And it's just because of the zoning change. The subdividing. That doesn't.
Yeah, I'm saying.
It's a much better place for a well.
They shouldn't be subdividing a lot like this when they don't have their own water available on the
Right.
lot.
Are these the new subdivision lines right here?
Yes.
So the septic's on the subdivision lines.
Look at that.
Well, I don't think they thought about that. But
We joined this party.
I know, I
late in the
understand.
game.
It's like, oh boy. Yeah, I tend to think they got a good situation now and they're making it worse.
Yeah,
But
I think this is
Yeah.
dicey. And I would not approve it personally.
I agree too.
Am I getting the sense that the board is not likely to?
I don't think it's
Yeah, I think you're.
faring well.
In that case, I would like to respectfully withdraw the application.
Is that the general?
Oh.
Had a really sharp pencil.
That's a prudent maneuver.
Alright, well played, Mark.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
You do need to accept the withdrawal.
Okay, we
Move to accept the withdrawal.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Haven't had that happen for a long time.
Thank you.
Really trying to read us, huh?
Well, I was under orders.
No, I understand.
To make an attempt.
No, I'm looking at this.
Sorry,
going,
I was
"What's
under
missing
orders
here?"
to tell you guys the whole picture.
I was
appreciate
looking
that.
at it and thinking,
Yeah, no, I was looking at it last night. I was like, this is really weird. What am I missing here? Okay.
pull one over on us.
Oh, well. Where are we here now?
That's why I get to
Okay, and once again, Mark Rich
I'm
from
good.
Site Design, representing the applicant at 36 Crooked Lane. This is a request to perform some brush cutting and some grading in anticipation of some future site work which will be brought to the commission at a later date. The wetland resource areas on this property and on adjacent properties have been delineated under separate NOIs and RDAs within the last 12 to 18 months, so they're still valid approved lines. And we're basically looking to do some clearing outside the 25 and to do some grading outside the 25 as well. That's basically the extent of the work proposed.
And are you following, is it the 50% rule here?
Yes, we're maintaining greater than 50% of the area between the 25 and 50.
I know.
That's the red is 25, the purplish is the 50.
And the orange, is the orange?
And the orange is proposed silt fence.
Okay, so it's silt fence the whole thing.
Silt fence the whole thing to minimize any.
And you're clearing everything within the orange?
Yes.
And changing grade.
Can I ask why you need to clear the whole site?
That's exactly my question.
Right. Because that's what people do these days.
Well, that's the anticipation of what they're planning to do with construction and development subsequently. The reason, for example, for working in this area is that this is where the force main is gonna go ultimately. And based on their anticipated site layout, this is what they want to do. They're gonna obviously all their structural work will be outside of the 50, but they're hoping to do this level of clearing and pre-grading.
The wetland's going to grow. If it isn't big enough already.
50?
50, yes.
And the trees are being cut down, I assume?
I know, it looks like the trees are within this.
Yes, they're trees that are within the proposed clearing area will be removed.
Can they not access a lot off of Grove Lane in that little driveway back there?
That's a separate lot.
So it's not a way that.
No, that's just an existing driveway servicing the other lot, which has a single family residence on it now, and you guys issued an approval maybe 8 or 9 months ago to redevelop that property.
And the sewer work through Grove Lane, all that fun stuff.
Right. I hate this trend of just clear cutting.
Yeah, I know.
It's just
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Stripping everything down and
Before they
stripping
really
the
know what
soil
they're
off and
gonna
then.
put there.
Well, you could tell them to come back with a design.
I mean, if it will make the commission happier at the moment, we could reduce our clearing envelope just to basically allow us to do the grading and the driveway access that we're proposing. And then when we come back with the full site development design.
Yeah. I mean, I would like that. I think it's just a good kind of going forward policy to say, get in there, look to see what you have before you cut everything down, and try to replant with, cultivated species. There's probably some beautiful trees and shrubs on that site that are worth keeping.
Yeah, sure. Old native species.
So I would like to see the envelope.
I would say,
Reduced, yeah.
as an option, and something we've done before, not to interrupt, we have had requirements of things of certain size to be preserved and kept. I know, just as an example, on the Washington Street site, I believe we required everything over 4-inch diameter, so like a 4-inch DBH to be retained. I mean, if you guys wanted to set something in there for size, I mean, they would keep some of the sizable things until the site design was set.
Yeah.
That may allow a little bit of both. So you can do those kinds of things. So, as a choice.
And if we could clear the underbrush, leave the trees until there's a final design, you know, we could do something like that as well. You know, accepting, of course.
Mowing, or you're gonna dig it all out?
No, it would be, you know, like a stubble cut type, you know, there's, yeah, a brush hog, you know, there's no need to dig it out at this point, except of course in the area where we're proposing to grade it.
Yeah, there might be some stuff worthy of keeping there that they might see.
So Mark, would you be amenable to coming in, clearing out for the driveway, and then, you know, this area like you just said, but sort of leaving some of this?
Yeah, we could do that. We could basically, you know, reduce this line to follow something like that. I mean,
I think it'd be a trend, good
Follow like a contour line or something.
You know, basically, you know, rework our limit of work to something, you know, in this area, cutting it off.
Right.
Something like that until we come back with a final design. This area is outside non-jurisdictional.
Right.
But we you know, we'd be amenable to doing something like that for the grading driveway, and then when we come back with a final design, we can discuss the other areas and what to keep and what not to keep. We could do at that point, we could have a better sense of what's actually there as well.
Right.
So if we specify to follow the 17-foot contour line, for instance, or what are you actually proposing there?
Yeah, we could.
It'd be awkward to draft it otherwise.
I mean, yeah, we could, you know, we could provide a revised plan that would say, you know, follow the 17-foot contour. That would.
You just jumped over.
Sorry, jumped to 16. Yeah, I know this is
or a foot.
I'm sorry. Well, that was actually better for you guys if we jumped over there. We could follow the 17-foot contour, and then you know, exclude this portion from the clearing for.
Yeah.
So you got a plan.
We could provide a revised plan if that would, you know.
I'd assume you'd be coming back when you had it.
When they have a
Well, unless they pack everything they want outside of the 100, they're gonna have to be back.
That'll be a little tricky on it.
That's why they'll have to drain the pool.
That's right, at the pool. Yeah. I'm laughing.
I mean, just as a suggestion to kind of keep it easy, you could even try to save a revised plan is where the interior corner is in between the 50 and the 25. There on the orange line. Sorry, I'll point it out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is you could, I mean, you could just run that line from corner to corner, and then where it hits here, going that way,
just leave for a
would
moment.
be there. They can do whatever they want in there. I mean, that's easy.
Yeah, we can do something like that.
There you go.
As a thought. I mean, there's some grading that goes past that, so you can switch it around a little bit. But
yeah,
you guys are happy with the revised plan showing that area on the westerly portion is excluded from cutting for now?
Yeah.
Yes.
That'd be cool. We can condition that.
We can live with that at this point, certainly.
Right.
I have an suspicion we'll all be seeing this very soon.
Yeah.
Either way.
Good. You think?
Would you guys all? We'll talk about it when we get to orders.
Orders. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Other questions from the public? Okay. Seeing not, Jeff, we have everything you need to close.
You do.
Close.
To close.
Move to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just two more and then you're rid of me.
Pulpus.
Do you want to do these both together?
Pulpus Harbor LLC.
If you'll have them together.
250 Pulpus Road and Pulpus Harbor LLC, 250 Pulpus Road, lot 1 and 2.
They're abutting lots.
Yeah.
You can probably do them together. It's the same kind of project for separate lots.
Yep. Same project. Separate lot.
Two plan. Good afternoon, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 250 Pulpus Road Lot 1 and 250 Pulpus Road Lot 2. As you can imagine, this is a subdivision which is in the process of taking place. The property, you have seen the property before. This one, main house was elevated, new foundation. There was a pool house reconstructed, and then there was a secondary dwelling constructed on the eastern portion of the property.
And you had restoration in that too, right?
We had some restoration. We had some areas that were just going to be allowed to revegetate naturally. There was some there's a path going out to a boathouse that's in the salt marsh. We were redoing pier foundation for that, and along that path there had been some trimming of the vegetation, of the native vegetation, and that was to be allowed to regrow and not be cut further. That work was completed, the construction was completed, the site's been sitting in a more or less finished state for a while, and now they are planning to subdivide. So what we are proposing to do at this point is to construct two separate septic systems where previously they had one large shared. The trenches for both systems are outside the 100-foot buffer. There are very limited areas on the property for that to occur for both systems, but we managed to get the leach facilities outside the 100-foot buffer. What we have inside the 100-foot buffer are the tanks and the plumbing, which you know, everything is landward of the houses from the wetlands, so outside the 50. But that's what we've got, you know, that's within jurisdiction for the septic components. We also are proposing 2 wells. We're proposing one well here to replace an existing well. Right, actually that'll remain for irrigation, but we're proposing a drinking water well, and we're proposing another well here to service the other lot.
So
there are several existing irrigation wells on the site already.
Mm-hmm. Did they put the trampoline in?
all right,
They did.
did we issue certificates for the original stuff yet? Did that come before us?
No, I don't believe so.
I've been
no,
wondering
ongoing
about
project.
the restoration and some of that for a while and kept waiting for the cert.
Mm-hmm.
So how is all of that restoration work?
I believe the areas that were supposed to be allowed to revegetate were in fact cordoned off and allowed to revegetate. I don't have an actual survey at the moment to tell you definitively, but we did maintain all of the, you know, erosion barriers where they were supposed to be, and the areas beyond them were not maintained further. So I believe that restoration has occurred largely because it's been several years now, and the natural growth. Because the main area that was cut was along this side.
But I thought there was some revegetation up here and cutting here.
There were some areas where there was some encroachment, and again that was silt fenced off, and it hasn't been maintained beyond the silt fence. So I'm fairly certain that the majority of the restoration has occurred, but I don't have a definitive survey to say that with certainty.
Sorry, Mark, if memory serves too, the original conditions required removing all that drainage pipe that went down on the
Right, there was
wetlands.
a
Remember
lot.
that green
Yes, I
drainage
believe
pipe?
that was all.
So-
This one, there's one going here.
When we did our site inspection, I think we had similar questions, and we kind of started with looking at the path to the little boathouse that was there, because that's where we had some of the cutting and some of the drainage pipes. We were unable to recover any of the drainage pipes that had been previously in there. They didn't seem to be there anymore. We tried to match them up with photos as best we could. Couldn't find any, and there hasn't been further cutting off of the path that there had been before.
That's good.
The other area that we looked at a little bit more extensively is when you come in on the driveway, the existing driveway for the buildings 1, 2, and 3. So the property on the left was one of the areas that was to be restored in spots coming up the slope, and that has been let go, and then we were able to measure some of the buffer zone kind of going around the interior point from kind of flags 18 through 15 and a couple spots that are there on the green, and we're able to get that 25 foot back out still within the brush. So it's pretty close just from our, I mean, I'll be honest, kind of use the old Stanley tape and feed it in and let the trees help hold it up so it doesn't break. But we check on occasion to just make sure that it's close. So it seemed fairly close. Obviously get a little bit of waviness through the tape being crooked and
But a good
not
effort
lined up.
on that.
And we would
It's
be-
as close as I would expect it to be for what it's worth, but it's all unmanicured and unkempt. I thought we had found another trail that went through, so we kind of took it. It looks like it was used more as a deer trail and not for persons, just regularly traveled, but it dead ended in a area where deer had clearly been kind of bedding down. So we were looking. So
Wasn't there also water on the, out by the boathouse that we asked to get removed? Didn't they have a spigot out there?
There was something at the boathouse.
So the boathouse looks like it's had some little bit of work done it, but honestly, the condition of the path doesn't look like a human has gone down there, save for
They've been working on
Joanne
it
and I,
Yeah.
for a while. I mean, it's the path itself is a little overgrown, and the material in the middle was about knee high to get down to most of it. So I'm not saying that it's been abandoned because
Yeah, but not.
there's still stuff in the shed, but it's not being regularly used or maintained for
Soon
sure.
after the approval, there was a bit of ice and storm, and the boathouse actually got knocked off of its foundation, and then they took the opportunity to rebuild that pier foundation,
Yeah.
and they put it back on. I don't believe there's any water or power out there now. It's completely, it's a shed. It's a glorified shed out there, that's been out there for, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
God knows how many
That's right.
decades.
I didn't see any evidence of it. There weren't any exterior lights, or I didn't see any spigots or anything that was too noteworthy.
Spigot on the path or something.
And it just kind of,
Could've been another
it dead ends to the back of the building has, looks like kind of double barn doors that you could pull out a dinghy or canoe, and then
True boathouse.
you go right to the marsh.
Yep.
There's no structures in the marsh or anything that's there. You'd have to traipse across if you were going to try to get into the harbor.
Okay.
Bring your boots though, because it was definitely muddy on the other side of that thing.
Okay, are there other questions? Other concerns?
I did peek under the trampoline that's set at grade 2, just 'cause I was curious what was underneath it.
Snakes.
No, I was hoping. No, it's just some gravel, some stuff that was
Critters.
underneath it. I was curious though.
I've never seen an in-ground trampoline before.
And that's such a good
That's
concept.
something that's new to me.
No.
I was hoping for something really cool underneath there. I don't know what. but
It's kinda-
I
it's
thought
kinda
I
weird.
thought I'd look.
The kids' clubhouse or something?
Yeah.
I was more curious to see if there was actually.
Rats.
To be fair, I was more curious to see if there was water that was accumulating in the hole.
It is a low.
Given for how the rest of the site is, but I'm not saying it was full, but there was definitely a little bit of gravel on the bottom, and I didn't want to lift it up to try
No,
to shimmy underneath a trampoline. So,
Furry critters.
but I didn't see any free water in it. So
Okay. Any questions from the public?
I did get a weird look from the guys from the heating and cooling place when I was looking at it.
So Jeff, we have everything to close on these?
Yes, sir.
Move to close.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. Press for determination. Pierre Crosby, 10 Wakuit Road.
Don't actually know if that one's working, so if you could still stay kind
Try
of
it out.
close to the middle.
You can pick any karaoke tune you want.
I think I can make
Any
myself heard.
tune.
I think.
That's good. Any background music for it?
Jeff Blackwell for the applicant, Pierre Crosby. And this is application to take an existing house and move it further away from an eroding shore and bank. This is a stretch just east of the airport where the erosion is quite active, and it is time to move the house. It's gotten down to a point where the bank is within about 20 feet of the deck at its closest point. So the septic system is already north or behind the house, so there is no septic system to remove. The area where the house currently exists will be just loamed and seeded and left to naturalize after the move. So it's pretty straightforward in that way.
So, Jeff, why aren't they moving it further back?
So the house doesn't go over the bank.
No, why aren't they moving it further back?
Further back.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry.
I may look asleep, but
That's a trick question. Well, I mean, they want to maintain a certain proximity to the ocean, and there's a large amount of property. In 30 years or 20 years, we may be back with a similar proposal.
Well, to be in all fairness, they are moving outside of the 100. So as soon as they cross that line, they could literally put it wherever they want.
Yeah.
So without you guys having to say one way or the other. So they could put it all the way on the far end of the property if they ultimately decide to.
Not yet. Not for a long time.
What's the erosion right here?
Yeah, I was just saying, isn't there some calculation? Two times the erosion?
Well, it's well beyond that, but 20 times the annual rate of erosion. I would have to get back to you on that. I know I've looked at the erosion in that area. It's probably on the order of feet per year, certainly. Not 10 feet a year, but it depends on the storm events. Really, it's cyclical.
Yeah.
Good on them for moving it out of the way.
Yeah, we should be saying thank you for proactively dealing with the situation.
So, Jeff, do you have a recommendation?
I do. I would recommend a +2, confirming the resource area boundaries, and a -3 for allowing the work without requiring a notice of intent.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it
Bless
doesn't
you.
fall in.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
It's been a long year for us.
So that's why they do that.
Is that why they move them? Holy cow, I was wondering.
I'm gonna miss this.
Those have its lighter moments.
It's always next year.
I'll have to watch it on television.
Oh, it's super fun to watch.
You can run downstairs, tell them to save your place.
Hey, you can come hang out as much as you want.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay. Certificates of compliance. Gallagher, 45 Millbrook Road.
So this was for a septic upgrade, and we were just waiting for the Board of Health sign off on this one, and we have received it.
Oh, good. Okay.
So we are able to issue that certificate of compliance.
Sounds like to make a motion.
Move the issue.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Town of Nantucket, Hammock Pond Road.
All right, so just one little update on this. So I've been talking with Emily at the Land Council about this, and there's a couple spots on the side that have had some, I would say, substantial kind of road runoff rivulets that have worked through. So I think we have a couple choices. This is why I left it on the agenda, to remind myself to bring this up. So the permit for the project itself is expired. So I think the easiest way to deal with it is just kind of order that work done to fix that. And then to try to reseed some of that area with kind of an appropriate seed mix. It looks to me like the one rivulet's going to take a little bit of material to close up. I'm not sure it can get raked out and evened out enough. There's one that's closest to the road that's pretty deep. It's probably about 6 to 8 inches deep in the deepest spots. And get some width. There's 2 other smaller ones that are probably with the landscape rake, metal rake. You could rake them out enough to deal with it.
Can we add like an erosion control?
So
biodegradable blanket. And
my thought was, you have a couple choices. We can hold the cert and issue kind of a friendly enforcement to say you need to put something in to hold the line there, fix that and get that reseeded and hope that it takes. And then once that gets in, you can release the cert on the main part of the project once that's in, or you can do that part now and then just order the other work to be done. I think it's probably smarter to do it the first way.
To hold the cert
To
back.
say hold it, and then we can just issue out kind of a friendly enforcement to just order the work done so they don't have to come back in to permit some kind of maintenance work that wouldn't be done.
So I'm worried they're gonna need to plug. The seating has not been
Seating
working
didn't take
there.
take on that slope as much as the other spots did. So, but that plugs would probably be something where you'd be back in for a permit to deal with. So,
but it would probably hold better.
Yes.
We're falling apart here.
So it's been a long 2 months. So if that's the will of the board, I'll just go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
No,
And
this
then
doesn't
we'll
even
just
have a
carry
file
this
number
to the-
either, though, so.
No, sorry, it just didn't make it on the sheet. It's 2437.
Oh, okay.
This was issued a file number when we did the project.
Yeah.
And then we'll go from there because we have to work with. It's a piece of property that is owned by the Bartletts and has a conservation restriction held by the land council on it. So we need to circle the wagons a little bit on everybody now that that's kind of what we need to do. So.
Okay, so we will
Hold it.
hold it and
Yes,
issue a
we'll just hold
friendly
it to the
enforcement. Okay.
You know, Jeff, while you're doing that, there's a patch of knotweed in there. That maybe we should just have them remove that knotweed too. It's just getting bigger and bigger.
Sure.
Yeah.
We'll add it in.
For sure. Okay, that's a condition when it comes back, or in the order. Okay. We all set on that one? So, Van
Yes.
Boris.
We're still waiting for the Board of Health sign off on that one. So we need to continue that one to the 3rd.
Okay. Orders of condition.
No problem.
So we're gonna start way down here.
So there's gonna be a few we're gonna pass on the way
Yep.
to. The ones that we have to do. I was really hoping that would happen.
Right, Jetty speech once again.
Check your email one more time.
I lost enough with my lights that I'll probably today.
It's so unfortunate.
So we're fine.
Just sitting on their ass.
Yeah, it really is terrible. Trying to do something good and they're holding it up.
Well, in all fairness, the sketch plans for that project are from like September or October, and then everything went through, and all of a sudden, the end of April, it was like permits, and
They needed to file that earlier. That was.
if we would have permitted up front, we could have avoided that.
They're coming down on us, but it's not.
Oh no, it's not your guys' fault at all. It's not really Heritage's fault at all either, but it's okay.
This was like for septic.
Do we wanna add anything?
Oh, that concrete,
curving,
the
concrete
lip
pad
on
curving?
the, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think you'd have, why am I writing? I think you'd have a condition 20 that would read, the oil pad shall be surrounded by a
containment wall.
Trouble is with that, with the containment wall, you have to allow for drainage of water.
Rainwater.
Aha.
Otherwise, you have to enclose it. It has to have a roof to prevent. I went through this when we put in the fuel tanks at Brant Point for the Coast Guard. Same thing. They had. They originally had planned for, it was like a 6,000 gallon tank and a containment wall, and then it filled it with water.
Yeah.
Then the tank wanted to flow. That was like 25 years ago. So they had to drill a hole and put a valve that the chief had to go, and it had a big flag on it to tell them from the window if it was open or closed. So when there was rain, they had to open.
Run out and open.
Let's scratch this idea.
That's the government. That's the government.
Good
So we're gonna do that. We're gonna have a flag.
Because they didn't want to build a shed over.
No, I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
The feet would be up and okay.
Okay.
No,
All
okay.
right, we don't have to add a condition 20.
There we go.
Okay, so this is pretty straightforward then. Someone like to make a motion?
Move to. As not amended.
Do we have a second on that one? Is all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That one passes unanimously.
It was a good thought, though.
It was a good thought.
That's seriously. There's a big metal, there was a big round disc on a
Yeah.
rod that had a valve.
Another little
So it was
flag.
above the containment wall.
Yeah.
Because the valve was on the inside.
Yep. Of course.
Oh, rain's coming, I gotta look out the window.
So you don't have a piling count here? Does that kind of give us some wiggle room to replace all the pilings?
I would think so.
Okay.
I feel like if you jumped in that building.
I know.
I feel like that.
Oh man, when we were there.
If you were gonna start hopping in the building, I'd be out of the building.
We used to crawl around under those piers and stuff.
So we kind of looked underneath, and when I saw the one that was like
Gone.
the 2x10 that was crooked on top of the piling that had been notched out and was sitting on top of the notch, I was just like,
Not so much about the vertical load, or more about the lateral load.
well, I was thinking, I was picturing more like some bad weather coming in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it being high and being like,
Oh, it's probably lifted
And
off
some
that
loose
many
debris.
times.
Loose
Yeah.
debris was taken out.
Part of
How
the
this
building's
flex
on
is.
the bulkhead, right?
Those piers don't
Huh?
look all that.
Part of the
bad.
building's on the bulkhead.
Yeah.
Part of the building, yeah.
Some of it's came.
That's
but
the
still,
only reason why it's still standing.
I was as I was looking at that, I noticed that.
Any
Well,
questions
issue
or
has
concerns about this
drafted
one?
Just the piling number, I guess.
I would second that.
Per the plan he issued, or is that,
Yeah.
do you want to add anything like that, or?
So it's gonna be amended.
well, we have that 18, the plan of record provided prior to notice and protocols. So
So that covers
So
the
he's
extra
gonna resubmit a
pilings.
new one?
it will be covered with that.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's as
Protection
written.
barriers, everything else. Okay.
I don't think I've ever seen one of those projects too where they don't get there and they're like, well, that one looks really crappy too. Now that we look at it again, and there ends up
But
with
they
an
do
extra
all
one.
look pretty bad. Yeah. Next to nice shiny new
We
one.
brought an extra one just in case. So we might as well put it in.
Okay.
Vote on
It's,
this?
written.
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
Sure.
Sure. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. I'm getting very casual.
It's almost impressive at times that it's actually
Okay.
still standing.
Oh, yeah.
Fine. I don't need overkill.
Then go jump rope in that place, and we'll see how fine
I
it
love how he
is.
says not much weight on his two-story deck on the thing. Engineers' versions of not so much weight than our versions are always so far apart. It's like, that's a lot. Nah. Okay, so High Garden Holdings, 49 Holbert.
So this is Brian Madden's project from earlier for the elevated walkway. So
Yep.
if you note really quickly, I made the comment about the elevated boardwalks before, but then section 5.03, I never remember it, but it did this time, actually grants waivers for invasive species work. Just kind of automatically. So I just kind of memorialized that instead.
Do we need something like if the invasives don't revet, like a percentage coverage over where that knotweed is?
So I think that's I think that's
covered
something
with
that
the photos.
if they do the report, if you guys find it to be inadequate, the commission can then take action from there.
Yeah, they clearly want to remove it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a gross standing that way.
Wouldn't even want any fertilizer in this one. I mean, it's just pretty darn close.
Yeah, they shouldn't be fertilizing or.
You could cross fertilizer to put any pesticide or herbicide. And you could have a condition that says no fertilizer is permitted by this order if you wanted to.
It just seems awfully close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For that one. We don't think we
Okay.
normally.
So out of 25,
Came up with the question.
no fertilizer permitted.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those weird spots. There's really not even any lawn
No.
around the structure right now,
It's
so
all in the dune.
Yeah.
it's a great standing knotweed though.
Got a lot of those around this island.
Character.
Funny how they don't need fertilizer, huh? So, move to approve as amended.
Go to second.
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Richard and Diana Chesley, 32 Westchester.
Alright, this order looks a lot like the last one because it's kind of a similar
Yeah.
project in what they're doing.
They, this is the one where they said they would, mark or fence the vegetated areas.
Was it? I thought that was.
I think so, wasn't that?
Yeah, no, this was. So you have 25.
Not a little bit. No, that was the one down in the hole. No,
Right.
this
Right,
one.
this
This
is,
one.
it's
So I-
now removed
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Westchester because it's
Yep.
lots.
I think you would put a 25 just to say something that areas shown as natural vegetation to remain on the plan of record
Yeah.
shall be marked in the field with permanent markers.
Yeah. Any rubber ducks used in the flooded areas to be biodegradable?
Right? Have them tether so they don't flood inside. Tether the duck.
So they don't clog the drains.
You can always go the remote route.
Oh, so real quickly too, I left on the one about debris within resource areas and buffer zones to be removed by hand because I've kind of found that the stands of knotweed, when you start tackling them, always have something weird in them.
Oh, yeah.
Some sort of like
A tractor buried in there.
a tire or something that I just wanted. They can remove it by hand unless it gets so crazy that it's there.
Yeah.
But those really densely vegetated ones tend to have weird stuff that accumulates in them over time.
For sure.
Some more than others.
Like around Brucey Hillgate's junkyard.
They're gonna find like a body in one of
Bruce
them.
Hillgate's. You know how much stuff I pulled out of there? Screen.
Kidding.
Because you couldn't get to it, it was so wet.
I believe it.
Any questions? Any thoughts? Everyone happy? Do we have a motion?
First issue.
Second.
Oh.
As
you
amended.
moved it.
As amended.
As amended.
As
Okay, a second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That one passes unanimously. Crooked Lane.
This is, oh no, we closed it with conditions, right? Okay.
This is the one with the trees over 4 inches, right?
Well, I think we wanted a 19 that the applicant should provide a new
Yeah.
plan showing the revised limits of brush cutting.
Yep.
With photographs? Before and after?
You wanna have them locate trees?
Did you guys want them to have something just to limit tree size for cutting?
I mean, okay, so it's bisecting two wells.
Yeah, maybe locate everything over 3 inches or something. What do we do on that? What do we do on that?
The last one we did 4 inches.
So that's probably reasonable.
So you'd have 20. The plan.
Diameter, or should we say 10 inches in circumference?
We usually say diameter at breast height, so DBH.
Circumference is a lot easier to measure.
DBH is like the forestry. That's how you measure trees.
Yeah.
Just saying.
They have special tapes that do it.
Yeah.
They're very fancy.
They're pretty fun.
So I will tell you too, measuring circumference on trees could be tricky because
If they're branching or
they,
the bark off
yeah,
shit.
trees can be not perfect circles. They can be kind of funky.
Okay.
DBH is really nice because it's a set standard that it is. So
And they're covered with poison ivy out here, so.
yeah.
Plus, not so fun.
And then the limit of clearing to be at, that'll be on the plan of record, I guess?
Yeah.
yeah.
Code number 19.
I think they can do what they need to do with leaving the trees
Yeah.
for now.
Move to issue as amended.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Okay, guys, this is your last order of conditions.
The last two.
Last two. But you don't.
That's
Well, now it's gonna keep going on. It has been forever.
And this is so much gotta
Because
come
they were
back.
gonna have a tennis court and then
Oh,
they
yeah.
weren't.
Town score got nixed through
Expenses
HTC.
all off
Right.
became.
So now they have two properties instead. It's fine.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
I'll be
one.
back for the
Oh, maybe I did.
We saw that. Yeah, we saw that.
Yeah, it was kind of odd.
So I'll be honest,
Rules.
both orders for those look the same. I mean, there
Yeah, exactly.
are no waivers and they're kind of standard
250
septic.
Focus Road.
So you can probably take them both together.
One could say someone just copied them.
Oh no, I totally did. I know. Totally.
It's like, wait, this is exactly what I just read.
I'll be honest, the difference between them is there's a lot 1 and a lot 2, but all of the other information is
Yeah.
pretty much the same. The plan of record is for septic system plant building 1, 2, and 3, and the other one's
Yeah.
4 and 5.
Yeah.
But other than that, those are the only things that changed from one to the other. Oh, and the DEP file number.
Yep.
Move to approve lot 1 and lot 2 is drafted.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
All right, I'll give you
Pass them
lot 1
in.
first, and you can sign that one. We can start on lot 2.
Okay.
Okay, hard work on that.
About that.
Okay. So other business,
Check, check.
approval of minutes. Figure out the
I
meeting.
got that here from text.
Did you fix it?
If anybody saw it, the same thing.
Well, after you pointed it out, I looked. I couldn't help myself.
So I will approve minutes, unanimous consent. Monitoring reports, Park One neighbors, 47, 53, 55, 7, 61.
So,
67, 69.
we brought this back on the agenda because we had done that site inspection out there and had a couple questions that we wanted Art to address. And I'm sure Art will address those. And then I know there were a couple questions about the report that Mr. Shapiro had as well. So if you'd entertain his questions or concerns, I think he'd appreciate that as well. So I'll turn it over to Art.
Sure, thank you on behalf of the applicants, Caspar and Nantucket Engineering, who've been monitoring this project and following the recent site visit. There had been a couple malfunctioned sprinkler heads, and so what we proposed is to bring in a couple small dump trucks full of sand and hand shovel it off the edge, no machinery, and touch that up and move the sprinkler heads back out of the way so there's not, still spraying down there, and shovel the sand off of the bottom of the stairs and just kind of clean up the area. Seth's guys it might already even been done. He was doing another job in Pockmall, I think, and I had notified the staff of our intention to do the maintenance work under the current permit. And then I think that was sort of the outstanding concern based on the site visit and the monitoring. And then I have had some communication with the Shapiros, and they had, and one of the other neighbors had raised some concern, again, with the proprietor's way being used as the access. Again, that's the permitted right in the middle of the project. It's, it's available to the public for that use. We did put in, as was included in an earlier monitoring report, some straw wattles and a couple of intervals to break up the storm water that was running down the path, and that's been effective. You can see where some of that, some of the flotsam is sort of accumulated against those small wattles. And the other concern was simply the respect to environmental concerns. And I had a long discussion with Seth Wilkinson about there was sort of some pelletized material, whether you got them pictures or not, I'm not sure, but that the neighbors had circulated. And that's not fertilizer, it's actually a pelletized mulch. And after they do the regular maintenance activities, they see if there's a disturbed area. So they just put down a fescue that's with a paper mulch mix. And that's, it's not a full hydroseed, it's just in small areas to, again, not leave things fallow, I think, as part of best management practices. And there was some question about portable toilets and what the workers were doing. And I know that while the main project was happening, there was a porta potty on site, which I saw, and Seth assures me that that's what they routinely do, even for the maintenance activities. They won't bring one in for this time for just the one day of a dump truck, but that it's their practice to routinely have the porta potties in place when the guys are there working. And one other question was with respect to the stairway that's in the proprietor's way. There's a slight curvature to it, but it doesn't seem damaged whatsoever. Whether that has any past permits or not, I don't know. It was there as part of the when we did our survey. But again, it's not broken. It's fully passable. I don't think that it's damaged in any way. So this slight curvature of a staircase in the public way is really something that's going to be somehow against the protected interests, if you will. And whether or not that works or satisfies the Shapiros, I'm not sure, or the commission, but I'm here as my clients want to stay watching the project and have been responsive every step of the way.
Gives new meaning to dump truck.
I think Mr. Shapiro may have some comments too.
Okay. Any questions for Art? Okay. Mr. Shapiro, you had a comment?
Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission, Robert Shapiro, 57 Pocomo Road. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you again tonight. I represent this time not just myself, but several of my neighbors as well, who have serious concerns about what's been happening with the sand delivery component of this project. I hope all of you have had the opportunity to read the letter that came from Steve St. Pierre. If you haven't, I have a copy I can share with you. But under the heading that a photo is worth more than many words, I would like to pass these photos around to you, have you look at them. This shows the project as it was being resupplied with sand in March. This is not just we're going to go to the bluff and dump over a few buckets of sand. This is anywhere from 30 to 40 or more tons of sand that are going over that bluff.
It's a whole series of photos.
Oh. The equipment that's used here is heavy-duty equipment. This is not a very lightweight project. I think the report that that Art just presented to you is very much sugar-coated. I am here to tell you the sour truth. The sour truth is that this sand delivery system is destroying the bluff in that area. Last year, after all of the sand delivery was completed, by October, this is what it looked like.
Thank you.
And it looked like that early in the spring before the replenishment took place. Art mentioned the sprinklers having a deleterious effect upon this unstable sand. These sprinklers are connected to my irrigation system, and they were not turned on until after June the 1st. And so they had nothing to do with the erosion that you see on these photos. This erosion of this unstable sand is due to the fact that every time there is a heavy rainfall, this is like a river that runs down there. It's a downslope from the road to the beach. And yes, they put a couple of little impediments there, and the water rolls right over that, just like a washboard. It's the movement of water on the denuded Proprietors Road that is causing the erosion that you see in the pictures. So last year, I was the one who was upset and complaining about this because I felt that I had erosion on my property immediately adjacent to the sand delivery site. Now it's the neighbors coming to me because they know that I've been involved with this, who are really upset about this, and Steve sent this letter and his photos to you with that concern as well. So each time they deliver this sand and then spread the sand around with heavy equipment down on the beach, it destroys the beach grass in the immediate area. Last year, some of the neighbors came back and were very upset about the fact that they had destroyed the beach grass, and so they replanted it. This spring, they destroyed the beach grass again. Today, they were out there dumping more sand down. They put down 3 more dump trucks of sand. Nothing stabilizes this sand on that slope. When I said to the gentleman who was working there today, what's going to happen with the first big rainstorm? He said to me, it's going to wash into the harbor because there is nothing there to stabilize it. The structure in front of the homes that have been protected have vegetation in the logs that have been planted above the sacrificial sand. The sand delivery chute is all sacrificial sand. Nothing is vegetated at the top. And even though they sprinkle some fertilized grasses of some kind that Art was referring to, when they start running the dump trucks back and forth, you see on this photo what it looks like. It is totally denuded. It seems to me that this project is working well for the homeowners who are involved in the project, but it's destroying the areas that the other homeowners have appreciated and have utilized for years. To say that there's only a slight bend in the stairway, well, I looked at that today, and there's separation of the structural elements in that stairway. I assure you that last summer it was not curved. I don't think anybody builds a curved stairway, and it is curved now. And so this sand dumping site is really actually no longer within the center of the project as it was originally proposed to be. Because one of the other neighbors and myself have chosen not to participate, this is now at virtually the end of the project. I think it is only reasonable to deliver the sand around the point where there's an established roadway. We don't have to be dumping tons and tons of sand to keep reestablishing the bluff. They're already bringing their equipment onto the beach via the point, and so they can bring their sand onto the beach that way as well. And it seems to me that there's no compelling reason that we can't change the delivery point to Pocomo Point as I have requested in the past. So we as the abutting neighbors need some relief from this. We can no longer just sit there and have this project destroy our Proprietors Road, our bluff, our stairway, and our eroding bluff. We need your help. We need an amendment to the order of conditions that establishes the Pocomo Point as a delivery system for the sand, and I welcome your questions.
That's interesting.
Well, I mean, I have to say, I hated this project from the beginning. Didn't vote for it, and I'm one of the people who reports when it's uncovered in the winter because I like to walk that beach. Unfortunately, delivering at Pocomo just is not realistic here. And I think, unfortunately, one of the reasons the sand is uncovered and doesn't have an erosion control blanket to hold it there is so that it supplies sand, hopefully, in front of your property. Because we went through that last year where it had the mesh covering, and then we were worried that it wasn't delivering sand, yeah. So that's an unfortunate.
May I ask why it is unreasonable to do it via the point?
Because trucking all that sand from the point over, then you have to dump the sand in some pile on the point, you know, which is technically a public access point. And then you're taking small machines a further distance to go back and forth.
So sand is being delivered via the point to other properties much further to the east.
On the other side of the point?
Further to the east, namely the Penske property is getting delivery of sand via Pocomo Point. And it's been going on for several years.
And the last time I was down there, I couldn't see the width of it. Didn't seem wide enough for a truck anyways, and it seemed like there were established dunes on the sides of it.
Some of these photos make it seem like they shouldn't have been doing work on it during certain time periods. It almost looks like some of the machines are below the high tide line.
Could be. You know, I'd like to explore whether it be this one or future projects that there should be some buy-in from the homeowners that have the erosion control in front of their homes to say, okay, if you want this, the sand delivery has to happen over your own property. So get together and figure out how that's going to be, because I'm with you, Mr. Shapiro. This is a undue burden on the end for your property.
To answer your question, there are 2 existing proprietors' roads exactly contingent with 2 of the covered properties. The original choice was to use this proprietor's road because it seemed to be in the center, but as I said, it is no longer in the center. Now, I don't think that opening those proprietor roads and doing the same thing is the answer to this problem. They're simply going to move it to another location. That's why I think the delivery via the point is the only good solution to this problem.
But I think when we looked at this on the onset, it was just such a huge distance. And then with the pinch point down towards the point, it just seemed unrealistic to be able to drive machines back and forth. I mean, really the only machine you could drive back and forth would be a Bobcat, and that's about a 1-yard bucket. How many yards do you deliver a year?
600.
600. That's
That's
600 trips up and down the beach. It's like, it
Which
just
would
seems
be
like a
devastating for the beach.
Yeah.
And it would have to be within the high tide zone.
It has to be within the project area.
Right.
I think. I mean, there's no.
Is how many times a year is the nourishment done?
As needed. I mean, it's been
sure.
twice,
Been twice,
once or twice, you know, to keep it covered.
Right.
It depends which winter, but.
I'm thinking about a conveyor. If it wasn't something you're doing a lot.
I mean, if I may, Mr. Chairman, it's a 1,800-foot long project, and we're talking about 20 feet tops width in comparison to the whole thing. I just have to respectfully disagree. I don't see that some sand even washing down the bank into the adjacent beach areas is such a bad thing. The sand is meant to be contributed to the system, and we don't believe that it's happening at such a level that it's causing any kind of smothering or adverse impact. It's still a highly cobbled beach. I'm sympathetic to the concern, and I have to also disagree with that this somehow is not in the middle of the project. There's this project to the left and this project to the right. I mean, while there's a gap immediately to the right, there are still 2 protected properties that are to the east, and then the several other properties that are back to the west. So, you know, and I know that the neighbors all want to be good neighbors. They want to maintain open lines of communication, and you know, as they head into summer, they'll be back around, and we can, you know, meet and discuss this. I will commit to again looking at the stormwater runoff. You know, in other words, if we need to do something additional or come back to you, you know, perhaps a bigger swale might be needed, or something, or some additional wattles or a larger diameter. We can certainly look at that. We don't want the water rushing over the, you know, over the top of the bank either. But that is, you know,
that's exactly what's happening, and I don't know that you can create some impediment that's going to stop that. We're going to continue to have that every time there's a heavy rainstorm.
So, Art, I have a question, notwithstanding Mr. Shapiro's reservations. Ben's suggestion that the other two proprietors' roads be used, how about if the delivery was in proportion to the armoring? In other words, the properties that are to the west of where it's being delivered now get their fair share, and then the properties to the east where there are proprietors' roads, then they're delivered accordingly. There would be less wear and tear on the proprietors' roads.
So I'm not aware of a proprietor's road to the east. There is one to the west, which is at the very westerly edge of the property, which is in between 69 and 71. But again, I think now you're spreading out greater impacts. And he, as Mr. Sparrow said, he didn't think that that necessarily was a better solution either. You know, we're trying as well, that we don't want to have, you know, the same exact concerns. It's going to be the same exact sand. And so we're trying to, you know, do the project in a way that keeps everything as tight and minimizes that.
When a similar project was installed on the western side of Pocomo Point last year, the sand nourishment for that project was brought in through the property of the homeowner that was installing this project.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to have a lot, but I think that this project is somewhat different because it's so many homeowners, and back to the same thing. So which one homeowner would get the access that then, or do you have to create multiples on all of the properties? The proprietor's way is public. It's a public. It's not even a butter's way. It's a proprietor's road. Everybody has the right to use it.
Everybody doesn't have the right to use it that dumps sand. That doesn't say it in any regulation that I've been able to find. And proprietors' roads are not designated for vehicular access. They are designated for pedestrian access. This is being used for heavy-duty vehicular access.
Okay, well, we don't know that.
Right.
So I think that would be something we'd have to have clarification on, but.
I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from. This is the unfortunate nature of erosion control projects, like 100%. Someone's going to be impacted.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So your irrigation stuff, did you put the irrigation out that we saw?
After they planted the beach grass last year on my property, they decided that it was important to irrigate it.
Right.
And so the contractor installed it, and I agreed to have them connected to my irrigation system. But that system, of course, was off all winter, not back until the beginning of June. So it didn't cause any of this erosion.
Well, the erosion we saw was like directly related to a broken sprinkler head that we saw. So somebody had turned it on. I mean, it was extremely obvious that that's where the point of erosion, from our viewing that we went to.
Unless it just happened to be there by coincidence because they eroded back from the road and the sprinkler head fell in, but
that's possible.
It sure did look
It didn't go all the way to the road. It was like it started right under the sprinkler head and then went down slow.
Well, you see in that photo that I passed around that a lot of the sprinkler heads and the lines were all exposed by the erosion.
It almost your pictures look a little different than what we saw. I mean, it seems like there was more erosion in your pictures.
Well, your picture
I'm not
depicts
sure when
what-
yours was taken, but
what exactly
when we
happened.
looked at it-
I didn't draw the picture, I didn't
No,
make it
no,
up.
I'm not saying, it just looked a little different, but that, like I say, it could have been,
It looked pretty bad when we were there.
it wasn't
Looked
good.
pretty bad.
It wasn't good. It wasn't good.
There needs to be a better solution than saying, you know what, it's unfortunate.
I mean, yeah,
No,
we
well,
had it
I'm trying to
covered
think of
last
one
year,
here.
you know, with the erosion control blanket, which would stop some of it, but then you wouldn't be getting fed as much sand as a result.
I'm not getting fed any sand. That sand is coming down the slope and going right out to the harbor.
No, but it's
Not to my
actually,
property.
it's protecting your property.
It comes back up to the beach.
It goes
Yeah.
back
They'll
and
bring it
forth.
back up.
It is, you get a benefit from the sand being dumped there for sure.
Well, there's
But I
no
do
way to
agree
bring
with
it in by barge, because it's just too shallow.
No, it's
No.
You know,
wicked
there's-
shallow, but,
The stairs are half covered.
yeah, that access road, I mean,
Well,
here's a,
so, I guess to conclude, and not to cut off conversation, but you guys could choose to take action if you wanted to. You could simply ask for the applicant, again, it's their, their burden to essentially comply to requests of the commission for information on these from the report, to simply look at all alternatives for proprietors roads and provide that information back to you guys. If you want to have that discussion and kind of definitively end what can and cannot be used for, and make that clear and put it clear onto the record, and if there are other alternative proprietors roads or easements or whatever's through that area, you could simply ask for kind of an analysis on that for other access, and then you guys could determine what you think is the best course of action from there with that information. But going back and forth about what is possible or not possible, or possible or possible, is
right.
I don't think anyone's going to be satisfied with all
No.
of those answers at this point. But I think you guys need to either decide to close the issue that was at hand that we had from the monitoring report and then the site visit, or decide what further action you guys want to take to.
I don't remember it looking like that.
Well, no, it would be that way for the day. It would go
You guys, we should have this as a roundtable discussion.
Well, yeah, this is frustrating.
Here's the pictures, the stairs, I mean, you can.
I mean, do we need to pull out the order of conditions? Because I mean, is this an adverse impact clearly?
It's definitely, it needs to be, it definitely is an adverse impact, which is predictable as an unprotected spot, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I'm
Would
wondering,
some kind of a chute delivery work? I mean, just to,
I'm wondering,
Right, some sort of shoot.
Well, no, shoot it, not so much sand and like.
unfortunately, I've never seen the
They
bank
have to-
before. I've never seen that spot before the project, so I don't know.
Which
All right, we're having multiple
You
conversations.
gotta care what
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah, that's
You know,
just.
Well, I just wanted to look
Dumping,
at
you
the
gotta go,
pictures.
oh, look, we're covering the stairs, let's hold up. Let the machine clear it out.
Right.
You can't just have a big pile up of it.
Would some additional erosion control along that proprietor's road be something that we could explore?
Well, if I may, through
Oh,
Mr.
please
Chairman,
do.
what we did was we had stopped short of the property line because of impacts, because of concerns with impact for refraction or any kind of end impact. So given that last year we had the blanket and there was concern that that was causing the erosion, I don't think that would be a prudent move. And again, in terms of what the bank looked like before, you can simply look at the bank that's not protected on the Shapiro property
Yeah.
right next door, and that's what it looked like.
Yeah.
I don't really see this as an adverse impact to have at a sand delivery spot sand that's available to the system. I mean, I think what we just went through for 8 months about providing enough
Right.
sand, and all we're doing is providing
Provide more
sand.
sand.
Right, so what's eroding here is the sand pile.
The sand pile
mess
is
the
eroding,
sand
it's not
pile, so
consolidated, and
necessarily
I
the
don't know
bank
that it's
itself.
necessarily,
Right.
I don't see how it's, when it comes to your protected interests, while the aesthetic of it may not be desirable, I don't believe that for this small section, that it somehow is having an adverse impact. And I think that, vegetation all the way back to the road, the buffer zone stops at 100 feet, and they're going back and putting some seed down. I mean, there is the point that simply the activity in of itself causes some disturbance. But if you go and look at it now, it's a short term, and I think the contractor is being as conscientious and as careful as anyone can be in limiting impacts and going back and putting grass seed down. And I just don't see the sand when I think about the interests in the resource areas that the regulations address are somehow being harmed.
Yeah.
How much slope is in that road?
It drops. It's got to drop 5 feet, I would say, from Acamo Road to the bank. I mean, I could look at the topography, but yeah,
Any way to build
it's
that
a long
up
gradual.
so you don't get the water runoff so much? Or
Yeah, well, we can look at that again. I mean, that's why we put in the water bars.
Yeah, I think
we don't want to go so far as to, completely dam that water. The idea is to slow it down.
Direct it off to the side.
Right. I mean, the other option is some sort of catch basin and infiltration system that runs back away from the bank to actually infiltrate the water. I mean, that's I would hope that in a natural system something like that can be avoided. But the engineer in me says, well, you could always collect and infiltrate that.
To answer your quick question, Ernie, from the GIS topography, is the edge of the paved roadway at Pacamo or dirt roadway is at elevation 30, and that top of the bank is at about elevation 18. So it drops about 12 feet.
Yeah.
That's why it looks like a river when it rains.
Through that run.
That's 12 feet.
But if that's what you guys would like to do and kind of continue that, I mean, you guys certainly have the right to request that coming in as far as the monitoring report.
We're happy to look at that again and see with respect to the runoff.
I think that would be a good.
And then obviously
that sounds
anything.
like a real problem.
Yeah.
I think we could see what we could do to break that water up a little bit more, for sure. I think what I probably have to do is actually, go out there in a good pouring rain and have a look at. Sometimes that's the best solution.
Join me, I've been there.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I just don't think the delivery from the point is realistic. I find the access small. I think you'd be driving through dune, in which case you're just running into a whole other nightmare.
Yeah. Art, the porta potty thing is not a major issue, although it was to Steve. And although you say there was a porta potty there, the photos don't reveal that. Steve was there and said he didn't see a porta potty, and that's why he described what was taking place. So I think you have to lean on the contractor to actually have a porta potty there rather than not say we're gonna have one there.
Yeah, I'm sure he read the letter, and I mean, I'm going by what he told. I saw it personally in the initial construction.
Right.
I don't usually go up just during the delivery.
3 years ago.
Right, and he tells me that that's the case. That's the way that back to you.
I would say that issue is more of a neighborly issue. And
well,
not
we want to. I think that the point's been made, and
yeah, and we don't need to discuss it any further.
No. So.
Well, thank you very much.
I think you guys are looking for a little bit of analysis on the roadway. And then we'll go from there.
The roadway.
Okay.
For the delivery point roadway.
Okay.
But thanks for everyone's time.
Okay. So we don't need to do anything other than that. Do we need to vote? Okay. So enforcement action.
We just had the ones we talked about earlier, and I guess I'll talk about it now. So we've had a report come in that we've been looking at in regards to some material that was delivered through the Baxter Road delivery point through the kind of the public way, the roadway access to like the viewing station there, the traditional delivery point on Baxter Road, with some material that there's some questions to its compatibility, and then there's also some level of debris endpoints. The original thought that it was something that went on to the geotube project. So we've been out and done kind of an inspection of the entire length of the geotubes on top and at the bottom, and then through the slope, and gone through the sand delivery records and purchase for that project. And the material that was delivered was pretty clearly determined to not be part of that project. And then after speaking to Netco, who does the maintenance on the core projects to the south, that they were the ones that delivered that material. So I've requested from them for their one, where they sourced it from, and their compatibility analysis on that, if they have it. I'm also curious where they got it from, and then I've asked for their kind of site foreman to set a date up with me by the end of next week to get out on site. And if it turns out that it's just not compatible or the debris is too much, my inkling is just to come back to have you guys ratify it, but it's just to order the material removed and just say adios.
What's in there? What is it?
A lot of there's
Sure,
like
yeah.
some plastic. There's some like plastic flagging.
It looks a little
There's
shady.
kind of like some visqueen pieces in there. There's some odd odds and ends. There's some cloth that's in the spot of it.
Yeah, well, that red type would make sense.
So-
Excavation.
Yeah.
It's like clay. It's a
So
little
that's,
odd.
that's stuff from somebody's.
Yeah.
You're touching it with your bare hands.
I figured that. That's what I figured.
Yeah. So it took us some time. We wanted to make sure
Interesting,
that before we went to the right contractor to talk about removal, that we had the correct one. So obviously our immediate concern was that it was part of the.
Don't leave me out.
Thanks.
We talked
I
about
figured you
using,
live over there. I figured.
you know, spoil piles from people's foundations and stuff, and that's not gonna be.
No.
We've really
So-
got to watch the material. It's getting
So that's
dumped
if they don't have the analysis and they don't have the other pieces that verify that it's compatible, I don't think we have any choice but to order it in its entirety removed. And whatever the logistics are for that, that is not our
walk
problem.
in front of a car to avoid the plovers.
Well, there's no
That's-
plovers in the area, so that's kind of a plus. But it's a couple hundred yards of material,
Oh, geez.
so it's going to be a to-doings to get out of there.
Somebody's
So
gonna.
they put that in.
Isn't this the second issue we've had with Nesco?
Oh yes,
At least.
at least.
Yes, the first issue we had with Netco, they were one of the contractors that did some illegal installation work before.
Right.
So,
What are you thinking? Yeah.
Yeah.
On that very bluff.
Interesting.
so if
Can
it
we
turns
pull
out,
it and it's like a license or something? I mean,
So,
this is ridiculous.
well, no, but I think if that's the problem, we order that removed is bringing them in front of the commission, just whoever, whether it's Dave or the job foreman, just to come in and just say,
What's the
it's
deal?
over. Next violation, you're out the door.
Yeah.
See you later. So,
How are they going to remove it without damaging the beach?
well, that's their problem to figure out. I mean, it's piled up right now. I mean, they're just going to probably start from the top of the pile down and just work to remove it.
Just truck it off.
But they're going to have
Pull
to
it
do
back
it.
up the bank.
What's that? I don't think they're going to be able to
See
pull it
that.
back to the bank. The
So
bank
I'll
is
truck
the
it
bank
all
is
the way.
too high. They're
Yeah,
going to have
you
to
can
do
reach
it.
down and get it. You got to
No,
truck it all the way around.
I don't think anyone has a machine that can get it. So,
They're trucking that all the way out of Hoyks Hollow then, huh?
Yeah, I can just
That's
see
the only
them
thing.
pushing it into the ocean at night.
Oh, I have a feeling.
no, I think the way you verify it is you just need to verify every load.
Every truck.
Yeah.
That
Sit there
comes
and
off.
someone watches
How
it.
many loads got dumped? That's how many need to leave the beach.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just need to verify it, and they need to verify where it gets deposited. That's that simple. So,
Such an extremely.
May I ask a board a question? Burton Walkite, is the same dump spot for the core as for the SBPF? Because it's right at the what we call Propaganda Park. It's right there at where the dump spot is.
it's a great name, by the way. Yes. So they do share that spot. I'll be the first to say
First I've heard that.
after this is going on and kind of talking to both, I know the contractor for SPPF isn't thrilled that they share it and they kind of make it work. They've also used their conveyor system before. They don't like that spot because they get nervous because it's right at the end of their project, and they don't like those guys working at the end of their project for fear that they are not going to leave it in the condition that it should be left in. They would prefer an alternative arrangement to maintain the geotubes and those separately, but it's unfortunately the spot that, kind of like the last project, it's kind of the established spot, and this is the spot that's kind of borne the brunt of that impact to this point. So
They could run a conveyor belt in reverse.
Yeah,
So-
they could run something.
well, they could run a conveyor belt in reverse, but I'm not sure how they would get it.
Effective,
Big,
that-
we have
yeah.
to get down there.
Have to have little scoops on it, like they used to do with hay
Yeah,
bale.
I mean, it's probably,
Thank you.
it's probably a couple days of work to do.
Yeah.
So,
There you go.
I'm guessing. I mean, I don't envy the work, but if it's not compatible, it's not compatible. And I have looked, there is scads of other conservation commissions and case law and stuff behind ordering non-compatible material removed.
We did that.
We have done it before as well. So I think it's there, but you just need to have the actual data behind it before we go down that path. Can't just say, well, I just don't like the way it looks. Unless it was so debris laden, you'd just be like, it's just too much.
Yeah.
I would be the first to say in doing the geotube inspection, and I think I told Ashley, like, we found an old dog harness and a couple broken solo cups, and there's a piece of just looked like surveyor tape that had got caught up in something that probably blown down, and a couple plastic water bottles that looked like they had washed in along. Like, there's debris that accumulates on those from top and bottom.
Yeah.
Some of it maybe too, where even where they're sourcing sand, whether it's coming across on the barge or something, that piece of debris may blow in at some point. It shows back up, but I think for the entire length of the existing geotubes, we probably had less than 5 pieces of debris that have kind of shown up on the top or in the template that were visible. Bottom on the beach is a little different, obviously in the active wash zone. All bets are off for whatever's comes in between Mylar balloons and plastic bottles and whatever, but that's not their responsibility to worry about what's washing in with the tide, unfortunately. So,
Well, I hate to have to say this, but do we trust them to be accurate on their
sieve analysis?
Yeah, on their sieve analysis.
so when they provide us a sieve analysis, that has to come from an actual analysis lab. It can't be from, like, you know.
But who says they don't just scoop some off the real beach?
Yeah.
Who
So
gives a
it-
sample?
So it's something that's there. Sometimes we've asked to be present for it to be collected. We can do that too. We'll probably try to collect it when we meet on site to go look at it, because it would make some sense. If you guys feel more comfortable, I'm happy to collect a couple scoops.
Yeah, I think that
might be
I have graduated from soil sample school from the fertilizer program more times than anyone on Nantucket. So I feel confident in saying that. So I'm happy to send a sample off and spend the $20 to get someone to run it through the sieve. So just to have it for comparative purposes. So that's fine. But we wanted to cross off where it was going to and from first before a lot of fingers get pointed for those things. We wanted to at least make sure that it was pointing in the right spot. But that's kind of weird. That's the only real enforcement that I have at the moment.
Okay.
I'm saving all the other good ones for the board rolling over.
Cool. Reports. CPC?
Nothing earth-shattering.
Not yet. Okay. We had a meeting the other night. I have to say that there wasn't. They're wondering who the next rep is going to be. I know that. Ian's interested. I don't know if you're going to wait until the next meeting with the new members or what.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'll put my 2 cents in unless there's somebody else that's showing great interest. But I would vote for Ian personally. I won't be there.
So I will say, keep in all right. So keep in mind too, as I know we have the lists that are there, but another new committee has formed within the town that has a conservation commission representative associated with it, and that is the newly forming Coastal Resiliency Committee as well. So
Oh my God.
That's an interesting one.
That sounds like an interesting one.
that one is shiny new. So keep that in mind.
Which one do you want?
I'll take them both.
That.
And hand off CPC.
So I will say, no one actually knows what the meeting load is going to be yet for the Coastal Resiliency Committee.
Yeah.
So if people are looking to get onto one, that may be a good one because it's unknown. But it could also bite you in the, you know.
How resilient are you feeling?
Could bite you, yeah. How lucky are you? But please keep in mind, I know with Andy leaving, we'll be losing our longtime NP and EDC rep. So we will need to fill that space. So if people are interested in, think about it. Some of the new members may be interested as well.
I happened to be at that meeting because they were reappointing BPAC members, and they were highly complimentary about Andy's long term of service.
I have to, one other thing about that meeting, which I thought
paid
was
for that
really
compliment.
amusing. We had the first time, I think, in all those years, we had a phone-in member. And Ian was in the crowd to watch the other side of a meeting. And it was like everyone's trying to figure it out. And that was great the first time for him, whereas they're like, oh, I know this. It was great. I
So had to go through, now we know.
See how smooth it goes. It's great.
So
Actually, it does pick up the pace by the. We got it down by the end.
So I will say too, I was going to save it for here, but I did get word during the meeting that Dave will be back officially, and then you guys will be getting joined by he's not here, but Seth was appointed, and Maureen was appointed. So Maureen Phillips.
Sorry.
Yep, who's lives out in Nantucket. She's been here before, so she's spoken in front of the commission. So so Dave will be back. Welcome back for.
Thank you,
Was
guys.
this, is this round 2? Round 3?
What's Seth's last
Two and a half.
name?
Yeah, that's right. Because you had the partial to kick it off.
I had a partial.
So he'll be here, and then obviously Seth and Maureen will be here starting on the 3rd. So
Seth's last name.
is Engelberg. Is Seth's
Engelberg.
last name. Don't ask me to spell it because I don't know if I can off the top of my head.
Okay. Any mosquitoes out there yet?
No.
Good. Okay. Commissioner comments.
I just have a quick site visit that I did this past week. A guy called Jamie Howarth is his name, from 58 My Comet Road Ave. What is that?
He's on My Comet Ave.
My Comet Ave. So on the north side of the pond. And he's had this long-standing problem with a tree that's growing in the pond. And that seems to be impeding the flow of the water to the extent that it does flow down there. I don't know. But there's a fair amount of algae built up. And there is an actual huge, what looks to me like an autumn olive that's growing in the pond. Yeah.
Autumn
olive. It's I mean, can you
Autumn
confirm
olive?
that? Have you
Is
seen
that
this?
how you
Autumn
So,
olive, yeah.
I have never seen it
water though?
really up close.
Yeah.
Every time I've gone, it's either been winter or
Yeah.
we haven't really got past Jamie's house before he wants to get all excited. So I've never taken a hard look at it. I know Rachel from the land bank has looked at it before.
Right.
She wasn't sure what it was, and I'll be the first to say Rachel is better at plants than most people I know. So there may be some question to it, but I'm happy to take a look at it again.
Yeah, I'd like to. I mean, I'm just mentioning because it's probably going to come up in a meeting in the future. And
Well, he stepped up before the Pond Coalition.
Okay.
He made a big presentation saying about his tree and
So
going to look at it.
I will say that we have been telling Jamie for nearly 3 years that if it's a concern, that someone needs to put pen to paper and file the notice of intent, and that's usually where it dies. So
The tree.
it's still the same.
I think it's who ultimately is going to bear the cost of either
Yeah.
filing the notice and then removing it.
So that's what we have said all along, is someone needs to file the notice, or if it turns out that he believes it's on town-owned land, then he would have to kind of ask the select board to authorize filing the notice to do the work, and then it would come in for permitting. So obviously if it's a native species or an olive, it's a little different permitting scenario, but it would need a permit to do. So we've been kind of in a holding pattern for a significant amount of time.
If it's an invasive species, it might be
Yes.
a
Does it
slightly
produce
more
olives?
streamlined process or something.
No, autumn olive is a highly invasive,
Yeah.
shrubby tree, and they spread like crazy if you let them go.
Berries make a really good jelly.
It's just a
Some people think so.
Their flowers
Really?
smell
A little
nice.
tart,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Yeah, they're really good.
autumn olives,
I'm gonna
they're
get
they're
them.
typically trees
We're
that we
gonna miss
see
your honey.
I can still get it to you guys.
that you can kind of root grapple autumn olives out. You can kind of rip them out of the ground if
Yeah,
they're
they
small enough and they don't really come back. But
this thing's enormous. If it is an autumn olive, it's the biggest one I've ever seen.
They should be, well, I guess they're about done flowering now, but
Mm-hmm.
they were just flowering, so it should be pretty obvious it's an autumn olive.
Right.
Yeah, it looked like it to me.
No, I'll definitely try to sneak out that way and
Yeah,
take a
check it.
look.
I mean, if you could see it, I'd like to get another opinion.
I will emphasize the sneak out there and take a look.
Okay. That's my comment.
I will also say that their other abutter directly down the pond is vehemently against removing the tree. So,
Can I keep
go.
this? Can I keep this?
Always.
Do I get to keep this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
so
I
typically,
understand.
typically I say no, but I will let it go because we always hold out hope that you'll return and I can just use
I'll
it
bring
again
it
and
back.
buy a new one.
I'll bring it back.
If you bring it back, but
Can
I have to say that it's been great having your expertise.
Thank you, Andy. It's been great being on the board. It's been really nice serving with all you guys.
No, I'll probably be back. What am I gonna put in my truck?
Yeah,
I'd like to
sure,
come
you
back.
can put it on your truck.
I think I would like
Get some
to.
peel on your truck.
I would like to.
He'll hold the truck. You see my truck.
I'd like to be back myself.
Yeah.
Before too long.
Yeah, we're gonna miss you guys.
Feel entertained.
I miss you guys too. I have to say, this is a good last meeting.
So I was just
I'm
going
a
to say
little scared with a couple of these things.
for my administrative part, I didn't have anything to say, but I've been putting some thought into it lately, especially all that's gone on, and I think the last really 3 or 4 years in my almost 20 years of dealing with commissions has probably been the best 3 or 4 years that I've seen the commission work. So,
That's nice.
to credit to all of you guys, and you know, the new members will have big shoes to fill.
They certainly will.
Mostly because Ben and Andy are both tall.
Literally big.
But they've also,
Okay,
you
well, I'll
guys
bring it
brought your
back.
own
Don't lose
special
it.
expertise. It's really good.
You're in a meeting.
Well, here, you know, I'll leave it for this one. I think it'd only be appropriate if the motion to adjourn tonight came from Ben.
Yeah.
Move to adjourn.
We have a second?
Second. There you go.
All those in favor? Aye.
Should we do a group photo?
I'll take your guys' photo.
We
Yeah,
do
good
that?
idea. Yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll wait till Ian's barbecue. We'll get everyone with a couple, you know, couple pops, and we'll get that photo. Everyone like.